Hello and happy Halloween. I am Angelique Jamail, and if you are seeing this video, then you probably already know who I am because you've seen it on my blog or social media. The reason why I'm doing this video today is because it is the last weekend of October, and on my blog, I typically do a feature called Witchy Weekends during the month of October, and I review books or movies or music that's sort of, witchy for the season. And this year and last year, I have actually been serializing a fairy tale that I've been writing, one section at a time. And ordinarily, I would have had another scene up this weekend, but I have to tell you that I just wasn't feeling it. I could not get it written. And the reason why is because I didn't want to write, just schlock and post it on the blog just to have done it. I am not the kind of author who believes that the muse has to descend, right, in order for me to write something, but I am realistic enough to know that, deadlines are deadlines, and I have other projects that I'm working on that needed my attention first. And because the story that I was putting on my blog was just sort of a fun thing, I really needed to focus on the novel that I'm writing and the deadlines for that first. So today, instead, I'm doing a witchy book and movie chat. And here with me today is my very good friend, Kara Mashrani. And
Oh,
she is going to help and talk with me about some books and movies that that we think are fun for the season and also just in general. So, Kara, thank you for being here today.
oh, thanks for inviting me, Angelique. This is super fun. I look forward to talking about what we've been reading lately and some of our favorite books and sharing them with your viewers.
Yes, I'm excited about that. So, in keeping with the season, the first one that I want to talk about today is actually, I actually want to talk about a movie. It was a book first, but it was adapted into a film. And I saw the film before I read the book because I didn't know it was a book yet. And I loved the movie. And I actually watched it a few weeks ago. My kids are teenagers now, so they could watch it. And we did a family movie night, and it actually really holds up. And that is Practical Magic, which is a very entertaining film starring Sandra Bullock and Nicole Kidman and Stockard Channing and Diane Weiss and Aidan Quinn and Goran Visnik and like a lot of really great actors from like over 20 years ago, so they all look very young, right? But it's a very entertaining story about a family, sort of a family legacy of witches in New England, and it is both a creepy and lighthearted story at the same time, and it has a lot to do with the power of family and sisterly bonds, which is something lovely and wonderful, and it's super fun, super fun. So
Oh,
share a movie adaptation you like.
yeah, that sounds really cool. I don't think I've seen that movie, so we totally need to check that out because we've been doing family movie night once a week as a regular thing with the boys, and we've been running out of movies. So,
Well, this is very seasonal and very entertaining.
very
There is
topical.
there is a very much some kissing scenes in here, and so they may go ew because that's the age that our
Oh,
kids
they can
are at.
handle it. They can handle it. They could do it. They could do it.
They'll
Those
live.
kissing scenes is not going to throw them. They're 13 and 16-year-old boys. They can handle it. Um, well, I've been reading so many great books lately that I want to share with everybody. But since we were talking about book versus movie, and I've been reading everything that Jane Austen wrote. And so Pride and Prejudice is my all-time favorite. Yay! And yes. And so I did very much enjoy the 2005 Keira Knightley version. And it had a couple of really perfect scenes in it with the interaction between Lizzie and Charlotte, her friend, and like just talking about, the difficulties of a woman growing up and her, requirement to get married as as what she has to do.
Mhm.
And so I really liked a couple of the scenes there, but going back to the BBC TV miniseries with Colin Firth back in the 90s is awesome. And if you haven't seen it, you have to see it. We had it on VHS tapes back in the day, but it's probably out there on Netflix or Hulu or one of those things.
Probably. I know that I have it on DVD. And I do love that it's a 6 hour, like I call it an authoritative version because it is incredibly faithful to the book and it is super, super good. Although I will admit that as much as I loved it when Joe Wright's version came out in 2005 with Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden, I'm like, nope, I'm done. This is my new one. I love it. So romantic, it's unfair. It's that's a really good adaptation of it too.
Cool. So what else are you reading lately?
Oh gosh, well, I have been reading a lot during the pandemic. And one thing that I have been trying to do the last several years is keep a list of all the books that I read in a year. And I find that when I keep that list, I actually read a lot more. I am a list maker by nature, and I'm really enjoying like seeing my progress. And one of my favorite trilogies that I have read, and there are actually 4 books now, but the first 3 books are the main part of the trilogy. One of my favorites that I've read in the last couple of years is Deborah Harkness's All Souls trilogy, and it begins with the book A Discovery of Witches. And it is so good. These books are wonderful, and you definitely want to read them in order because it is a contiguous storyline. And the main character is a woman who is a witch, and in some ways it's a romance, but it's not category romance. It's got a strong romantic plot line, but that's not the only or main plot line. And her counterpart is a vampire who is also a neurophysicist, I think. I think
that's an interesting combination.
It's really cool, actually. He's like my book boyfriend, right? It's an absolutely wonderful trilogy. The 4th book came out maybe a year or 2 ago, and it's called Time's Convert. And it's also a very good book, but it focuses on some ancillary characters. Like the characters in the main trilogy are in Time's Convert, but the main storyline is on some ancillary characters, and it's quite good, but it's just really different.
Now, is this one of those series that if I start reading, I'm going to be desperately waiting for the next one to come out?
No, because they're all available now.
They're all available now.
I think you'll be okay. But you should read it. Everybody should read it because the writing is lush and fun, and like it's I don't know, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous prose, and it's a really fun story. And as you move through the trilogy, it actually gets really funny sometimes. Like it's not a comedy by any stretch, but the writing is very witty and enjoyable. And if you like magic, this is a great option. They did make on Sundance, I think they've made a TV series. They've got 1 season done, and maybe a 2nd season is coming. And the first season follows what happens in the first book, though it's got there's a lot of adaptation going on, and it's good, but it's like I enjoyed watching it, but I loved the book so much more. The book is definitely worth reading. So that's one of my favorite trilogies of the last few years.
Let me tell you about something else I'm reading lately. Going back and pulling old books off the shelf. So as you know, my husband has a huge paperback collection of sci-fi and fantasy from the 80s and 90s. And there's quite a lot of books I haven't had a chance to read yet. So I was looking in particular for a female author, fantasy author that I had not picked up before, Pamela Dean, The Secret Country, which came out in the 80s. Is a fantastic series, trilogy.
Mhm.
YA before YA existed,
Right.
about a group of kids, a sister and brother and their cousins, which is two sisters and a brother. So these 5 kids that are aged 9 through 14.
Mhm.
And the premise of the story, which is, from the beginning, is these kids, when they get together and they've spent summers together, they have this huge made up story that they play act. They're out in their backyard pretending to be a king and a knight and princesses, and in this made up land with unicorns and dragons. And
Mhm.
they act this out, and they've been doing it for years, as long as they can remember.
Cool.
And then suddenly they discover that everything that they've made up is in fact real, and they get they get dropped into it in what feels at first, you're like, oh, this is just a Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe kind of story.
Right.
And you feel that way for about a chapter, and then it completely takes its own direction.
Nice.
And it's an incredibly rich story. I love the way she describes dialogue and interactions. And there's so many little moments where they're like, and the kids looked at each other like a child who had thought about stealing a cookie out of the jar, but then changed their mind at the last second. Like these very detailed
Oh, that's cool.
descriptions of interactions. She's a fantastic writer, and I had not read
Oh,
anything of
great.
hers before.
I
And
would
this could
love.
totally be made into a mini series or a movie. Somebody should pick it up.
Oh, that's a great idea. I totally
Really?
would have loved those books when I was growing up too. That'd be fun. That's like what that's I love that idea, writing about your siblings and your cousins. When I first started writing stories, that's what I did, right? I started writing about my siblings and my cousins and the adventures that we would have. Of course, I had so many,
Mhm.
cousins.
And
So I had
and
a big cast of characters to choose from.
wonderful.
Good stuff. Well, I have a book here that it focuses on a pair of sisters.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a good segue. We didn't plan that, but that's very nice. And that is Wicked Like a Wildfire by Lana Popovich. And Wicked Like a Wildfire is actually the first book in a duology. The second one is called Fierce Like a Firecracker.
Hmm.
So it is a continuing story. When you get to the first book ends on a cliffhanger. The second book is already out, so you don't have to like be on tenterhooks for very long. You can get both of them. But this is
Cool.
another book which I think it's considered YA because the protagonist is a teenager. But it's a very it's a very mature it's mature subject matter. Of course, we see that in YA a lot
Yeah.
of times, but it's
Yeah.
like it's like a sexy book, right? The writing is really gorgeous, and there's romance in it, but it's all extremely magical. And the idea is that these two sisters who are in this book, they are magical, and they come from a long line of magical sisters, and they are I don't want to give away too much, because if I tell you too much about the story, it'll spoil a lot of the mystery
Don't,
as it unfolds throughout the story.
yeah. I don't want to know. I'll be
No, no, no,
surprised.
no, no, I don't want to spoil it. But they come from a long line of magical women that stretches back into the ancient world,
Oh, nice.
and their magic is gorgeous and illusory. They can the magic that they create is performative, and it's not entertainment, but it is meant to create beauty for an audience, right?
Oh,
And it is pretty spectacular and really beautiful writing. And so that's
hmm,
Wicked Like a Wildfire by Lana Popovich. So
cool.
very good stuff. Set in Eastern Europe. It's really
Hmm. Nice, nice. How are you feeling? Do we want to do one more? I've got a whole stack of books here of things I've been reading.
I think you pick one more book or category that you have, and then I have one more category to talk about too.
Well, I think just the last thing then, just for me to finish up, is to what I'm going to be reading next.
Yes.
So Garth Nix, who's a fantastic fantasy author from Australia, he wrote the Abhorsen series,
Yes.
Lyrial, Sabriel, great series of books. Highly, highly recommend
Those
it.
are
Everyone
those
should
are
read
like Anisha's favorite books, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is a new one of his that just came out. We just got it in the mail, actually. And we did a live stream with him recently where he was talking about the book and said that he got the idea at a conference and was actually talking with the booksellers in a locally owned, locally managed bookshop. And they said that it's actually very common that the guy who's speaking was left-handed, and he said everyone in the shop was left-handed, and that it was actually a relatively common thing for people that work in bookstores to be left-handed. So I'm curious to know if that's true in this country as well. But yeah, this will be my next read once I finish the Secret Country series.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Well, let's see. The book that I am currently in the middle of is not actually related to the season of like witchy stuff. It's actually White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, which I highly recommend, though it is a little bit off topic for us today. So the last category that I want to talk about is a genre that is near and dear to my heart because it is one of the genres in which I write, and that is completely reimagined fairy tales, or familiar stories which have been like stripped down to the wall studs and the foundation and given a whole new house. And two examples of that I love. I've got one that is a bit older and then one that is very recent. And the older one is Gregory Maguire's Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, which is a fantastic book. I will say the first time that I read it, I actually had to put it down because I wasn't quite, I read it pretty soon after it came out, which was, I want to say in like the early 90s. And I was like, I'm not quite in the right headspace for this. I think I was probably mired in writing my thesis.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was college time.
I don't have time for this. So I put it aside and then I graduated. And I picked it up again and I'm like, oh, this is so good. It is good. And it also spawned a series, which is very, very good stuff. And Gregory Maguire is also one of those authors that you can feel good about supporting because he's a genuinely fantastic, amazing, wonderful human being.
I have to check that out.
Yeah, no, this one's really good. And it's not really on the radar so much anymore, because it was, it was so long ago. And then of course it spawned a Broadway musical, which is terrific and funny and has fantastic music and it's a really good show. But it's, again, like most adaptations, it's pretty different from the source material. And one of the things that I like about reimagined tales is that they are so different when they're done well. I think they are so different from the source material. Gregory took an idea of a character in our collective consciousness, the Wicked Witch of the West, who was so vilified that just the name of the character could produce this like visceral reaction in a person, right? And so he took that person and took that character and made her into a sympathetic protagonist and built up this whole huge like political story drama. It's gorgeous stuff, really good stuff. And then the other book in that category that I wanted to highlight is Naomi Novik's Spinning Silver.
I've read that.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Everybody needs to read.
Everybody needs to read this book. It is a Rumpelstiltskin story that is set in a magical, like medieval Russia, maybe. I don't know. It's a little bit unspecific, but that's the feeling that I get of it. And it's pretty terrific. The writing, again, I'm a sucker for really good literary writing, right? Meaning character driven with excellent sentences, like excellent, beautiful prose. And this one's great. It was a I don't know. I think, didn't it get maybe a Hugo? No. No,
I don't
Uproot, the one
remember.
before this, won a Nebula Award, and I feel like this one might have been nominated too. But it's got three protagonists. I guess technically this would be a YA book because all three of the protagonists are relatively young women. I would say probably late teens ish. But it doesn't read like a YA book. It reads like general adult fantasy, and it follows these three stories that are just spectacular, and they're all three separate storylines that converge in an overarching plot that involves magic, thing of the season, magic. And so that is all super good stuff. And I've got a million more books that we could talk about, but we'll have to.
Yeah, I kept finding more on the shelves that I wanted to share.
I
thought of 3 more while we were talking, so we need to do this again sometime soon.
We will definitely do it again sometime. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm really glad that we could do this.
Yeah.
And
do you want to mention your books before we go?
I probably should, right? This is going to be on my author stuff, my author pages. So I do have some books out. One just came out. We just had the book launch last week. It's called Homecoming. And if you like urban fantasy or magic realism, then you should check out that. It's the Animal Affinities series. And Finis was the first book. And Homecoming is the second book. And it's set in a world where people have animal characteristics, but not in a way that perhaps you've maybe seen before. And it's very good. And you didn't know that I was going to do this, but a little bit of fun trivia fact. Kara was the model for the cover of Finis.
That is me on the cover.
Everybody, when they see that cover, they're like when I'm at author events or something, they're like, "Is this you?" Not, it's Kara. Because it's from the back and you've got that long black curly wig on, and it's so beautiful. And
that was really fun doing that.
It was such a fun photo shoot that day. I was so glad that you did it. Anyway, well, this was great. I hope everybody out there has a wonderful Halloween and that you stay safe.
Halloween. Yeah, stay safe out there.
Yes, do safe Halloween festivities.
Yeah, do something safe, or just stay in and read a good book. You know, that's
do that. The Mandalorian just came out. You can stay in and watch The Mandalorian.
Yeah, totally.
Or play Jackbox games.
Yeah.
I'll see you at 8:30.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. Thanks, Kara. We'll do this again. Bye, y'all.